Hi, shalom, friends. If I were to ask you, what role do you think the Jewish people have played in civilization? Would you suggest they're the conscience of the world, the teachers of the world, the prophets of the world, the doctors and lawyers of the world, the intellectuals, the business people? I mean, probably every one of those descriptions can be it's certainly valid as an opinion, and maybe even strengthened and supported by proofs. But I think that a very interesting definition of the Jewish people would be to ask God himself. And God actually did that. And in the book of Isaiah, Yeshayahu, chapter 43, verse 10, Hashem says, "You are my witnesses," referring to the Jewish people, "my servant whom I have chosen." And you could read the passage, but it's amazing. God chooses the Jewish nation, the Jewish people, to be witnesses. And I would like to share with you today perhaps an insight into that role that we all play. I'm going to offer a parable which is based on an old Hasidic parable. And imagine 100 years from now, the year 2116. Perhaps there's a colony on the moon. And just for the sake of science fiction, it's a colony that they're still trying to get it right. So they send batches and groups of couples, 100 at a time, but not all at the same time. It's 100 at a time. They wait 20, 25 years, and then a second group, and then a third group, and then a fourth group. And obviously, each group brings their expertise, and they bring a fresh vigor, and little by little, the colony is growing. They keep on adding these airlocks, and it's expanding. So imagine for a moment a couple from Northern California who love nature, but are very adventurous, somewhat scientific, and they volunteer for this mission. And they're told, after all of their training, that they could take very little with them, because obviously, to be transported from Earth to the moon and perhaps back eventually, the issues will be of weight. So they're very, very selective. What are they going to take? And they decide that one of the most important things they should take with them is an album of this couple's love of nature. Because they have pictures of skiing, they have pictures of beach, they have pictures of myrrh woods, of redwoods, and so on. And sure enough, they're in this wonderful group, and they're transported, and they're living in a completely new environment. There's no gravity, there's no rain, everything is climate controlled, the food tastes very different, and so on and so forth. Well, this couple has a child, and then a second child, and they're actually prospering together with the other couple of 100 people that are living on the colony. Well, we all know this to be true, that children love stories, they love pictures. And what do you think was the favorite book that the children loved? Well, it was the book of Mommy and Daddy on Earth. Because Mommy and Daddy, whenever they looked at Earth, they would explain, oh, you see this white, this is snow, and they would try to explain to them the feeling and the texture of snow. And then they would try to explain what it means to ski, what does it mean to feel cold air rushing against you, the adrenaline, how that felt. And then there would be a completely different picture of Daddy and Mommy next to a gigantic tree, hundreds of feet in the air. And they would try to explain what that means and how they felt. And then there would be another picture of them at a beach and trying to explain to them the crashing of the waves, feeling some of the surf on their cheeks, and so on and so forth. The parents themselves, in the beginning stages, would speak with a lot of passion about it. But over the years, the 6-year-old turns into a 12-year-old, and the 12-year-old now is becoming 15 and 16, they still look at the pictures. The parents miss Earth, but they can't speak with the same vigor about how it felt. I mean, after all, almost 20 years has passed since they actually experienced it. One day, the parents overhear two of their children talking. And the 15-year-old says to the 12, "Do you really believe Mom and Dad when they say they were at all of these places?" And of course, the young one says, "Of course, they never lie." And the older one says, "But how do you know they're not pictures? How do you know they're not the movies we watch? Because we watch movies, and a lot of times Daddy and Mommy say that was made in a studio. It didn't really happen. How do we know that this really happened?" And of course, the younger one indignantly says, "Because they said it happened." And the parents are hearing this, and they're wondering to themselves, how can they actually make their experience more real to the children? The children were born in the moon. And of course, they see pictures, they study about it, there's live streaming from Earth, but it's all pictures. It's all Hollywood to them. How can they distinguish the imaginary from the real? Well, their prayers were answered because the next group of people were scheduled to be coming. Of course, the entire colony came out to greet them. And what do you think everyone wanted to hear about? What's doing on Mother Earth? So they have this wonderful welcoming reception center, and the parents are there with the two children who are actually doubting, is there such a thing as Earth? Did these experiences really happen? And out come a fresh group of people. Some of them still have tan. And each one of them talks about their background, where they're coming from, and suddenly the hesitation and the doubts go away. Because these are people that just came from that environment. These are the people that actually experienced Earth. Friends, imagine for a moment you tell a person about, there's a great God. He created heaven and earth. This great God is involved very much in each and every individual. This great God makes things grow. This great God supervises the decay and death as well. This great God created nature. He created miracles. And over years, people say, I hear what you're saying. I would like to believe what you're saying, but I haven't seen it or experienced it. So maybe it's just a theory until he meets Mr. Goldstein or Mrs. Goldstein. And suddenly he meets a people who once a day put on a certain ritual. They go through a certain ritual. They put on tefillin. Every seventh day, they keep the Shabbat. They don't work. And when he says, why are you not working? He says, what do you mean, why am I not working? God did not work today. He created the world in 6 days, and he taught us that there should be one day that we go within. And they say, you got to be kidding. God created the world thousands of years ago. He said, well, so what? It's very real to me. The 6 days of the week correspond to those 6 days, and the Sabbath corresponds to the first Shabbat. And then once a year, he sits down with an elaborate meal. And he starts off by saying, God took me out of Egypt. And this fellow says, what are you talking about? That's a theory. That's a story. He says, no, God took me out of Egypt. This is the bread I ate. Here's the bitter herbs. I remember the bitterness. And they say it with conviction, and suddenly people have met a witness. They've met people that actually have experienced God, live with God, and actually feel his presence. That, my friends, is a revolution. That's something that we give the world. The world does believe in God. Nations of the world do want to accept a higher deity, but they don't see it that clearly. And it's only in the books until the Jewish people appear. And then suddenly there are live witnesses to the splitting of the sea. There are live witnesses to revelation on Mount Sinai. And there are live witnesses that anticipate a third temple coming down from heaven. This strengthens all of humanity. This reaffirms the truths of the Bible. So we are part of an awesome people that are witnesses and actually affirm the existence of Hashem. This awesome responsibility is something which is really wonderful. What happens, though, if there's a witness who witnesses something but doesn't come to court? Though he witnessed, it doesn't mean anything. He has to testify. We're Jews. We have that ability within us to testify, not only to be the witness. Our job in the last hours of exile before redemption is to not to forget that, to testify on the existence of God and to affirm his very being. Shalom.